Hello, everyone. If I could have your attention up here, please. Thank you so much for waiting. But now we are finally able to begin our presentation right now. So thank you for all for joining our leadership luncheon. I would like to recognize the many educators and mentors who have brought students with them here today. We thank all of our inspiring students for their attendance as well. We'd also like to recognize our RNAO President, NP Lamodolkar, our CEO, Dr. Doris Grinsman, our RNAO board members, past presidents who are in attendance, as well as representatives from other nursing organizations. This year at our luncheon, we are honored to hear powerful stories of strength and equity and learning from two inspiring leaders, Terry Montour, a labor and indigenous rights activist, and Bernice Carnegie, an author and community leader focused on education and social injustice. They will help inspire action towards an equitable, inclusive, and culturally safe future for nursing and our communities.
After the presentations, we'll also be presenting the RNAO Student of Distinction Award. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to our first guest speaker, Terry Montour. Terry Montour is a Ghanaian Gahaga Wolf Clan woman from 6 nations of the Grand River and has been a labor and indigenous rights activist for over 2 decades. She is the granddaughter of nursing icon Edith Montour, the first indigenous registered nurse in Canada. Edith Montour holds an important place in Canadian nursing history as the first Indigenous woman in Canada to become a registered nurse and one of the first Indigenous women from 6 nations to serve overseas during the First World War. Her determination to pursue nursing despite systemic barriers and discrimination demonstrated courage, resilience, and leadership at a time when Indigenous women face significant restrictions in education and professional opportunities. For nurses and nursing students today, Edith Montour's legacy is a reminder of the profession's responsibility to advance equity, cultural safety, and advocacy while recognizing the vital contributions Indigenous nurses have made and continue to make to healthcare across Canada. Please help me welcome Terry Montour to the podium.
Sego Sewa Guego, Terry Montour Yongyaks, Wagwaho Ganiganhage, Oswego Nita Wagano. My name is Terry Montour. I'm Mohawk Wolf Clan from 6 Nations of the Grand River, and I am very, very honored to represent my family here at this gathering, and also to tell you a little bit about my beloved grandmother. Charlotte Edith Anderson was born on April 10th, 1890, at 6 Nations of the Grand River Territory. She was the youngest of 8 children of John and Mary Anderson. And I want to situate the Anderson family a little bit because I think it's really important to kind of understand them and how my grandmother came to do her great adventure. So my great-grandfather, John Anderson, was an interpreter. He was Tuscarora from the Tuscarora Reserve in the U.S. And he was the interpreter on not only at St. John's Anglican Church, but for the Haudenosaunee Confederacy Council. He spoke apparently all 6 of our Haudenosaunee languages, plus English. And my great-grandmother, Mary Anderson, was the Mohawk Bear Clan mother. And in our ways, the Mohawk Bear Clan were essentially the medicine people. In our stories, the bears had shown the people which of our medicine plants are safe. And so the Bear Clan holds that knowledge, and my grandmother had been raised in that kind of environment where her father was very political and her mother was a clan mother and distributed medicines. And it's important to understand from where she came from. So she was the youngest of 8, and she had 3 older sisters and 3 brothers. And she was expected at the time to look after her sister's children because they were much older. So she went to day school on the reserve. It had been established, I believe, about 5 years earlier, and her older brother Sam was a teacher. And so she went to school on the reserve in day school, meaning that you went to the school and to go home. Not that day school was any better than residential school. I mean, I'm a survivor of day school, and I can tell you that it wasn't the best. But we persevered through that. By the time she was 12, she would have finished, by the time she was 13, she had finished grade 8. And that was as far as Indigenous girls were allowed to go at the time. If she had wanted to go to high school, she would have had to have left the reserve, and she wasn't ready to do that at that point. However, after a couple of years of like raising her sister's children, she decided to return to high school at the age of 18. So she went and boarded in Brantford at the Brantford Collegiate Institute, did her whole high school in 2 years, and graduated at the top of the class. Education is really important in my family. Several of my cousins I have one cousin who's a professor at McMaster. Everybody does a lot of educational work. Another of my cousins was the past president of the Museum Association of Canada. Education is really important to us, and that was from the example of our grandmother. So she went back to school. By the time she was 20, she decided she wanted to be a nurse. But you have to remember at the time, and I want to set this stage very clearly, the Indian Act held sway over how Indigenous people entered into any kind of life in Canada. And if essentially the barrier of the Indian Act was such that if you wanted to leave the reserve for any reason, for education, for work, you had to be enfranchised, meaning you gave up your status and could no longer live and be on the reserve and be considered an Indigenous person. So I have to really stress this because my grandmother, being the daughter of a clan mother and an active member of the Hereditary Chiefs Council, that wasn't something in her mindset. There was no way she was going to do that. So one of her sisters, her older sister Ida, by this point had moved to Buffalo because she had married and they had moved across the border, sent her a newspaper clipping for a nursing school in New Rochelle, New York. And they were opening up their schooling and it was full scholarships if you had the marks. And I later asked my grandmother, I said, why did you do that? And she said, well, it was something to do. But I think that at the time, this was the fulfillment, like she wanted to be a nurse. She wanted to do something different, and she wanted to have a different life than what was prescribed for women at the time on the reserve. You were expected essentially to get married and have kids. That was it. And I think that because she was the youngest of an education-driven family who viewed themselves as very progressive too. That's the other thing that's really important. They were also Anglicans. Their social life revolved around a church called St. John's of the Tuscaroras. And so my great-grandfather was very present in that church, but also her brothers, one of her brother Sam, who was not only a teacher and had been educated and could speak all the languages as well, was nominated to sit on the Hereditary Council as a Tuscarora chief because his father was a Tuscarora. They got a special dispensation from a Tuscarora clan mother to sit on the council as a Tuscarora. So she had this political understanding of who we are, of who the Mohawks of the Haudenosaunee at Six Nations are. And I really think that that was really important to her. She wasn't willing to give up her status. But if she went across the border and went to the US, they didn't know who she was. She could enter school as kind of an anonymous student because she had the marks for it. So in 1910, she's 20 years old, she travels to New York State and New York City at the time, which would have been like, and I like to think about this a lot, on her own. There's no Indigenous Students Associations. There's no, help on the other end. She went with basically a suitcase and a desire to become a nurse. So I think about that a lot, and whenever I get depressed or sad or feel that something's really too hard, I think about her getting off the train in New York City with a suitcase in her hand and trying to figure out her life. And I think that that's really, really important. We have to really put ourselves back in that time frame. 1910 for an Indigenous woman straight off the res, that must have been something. So I like to think about the perseverance that would take. And we like to say among our people that the Tuscaroras are very stubborn, and she was very stubborn. But her mother was Mohawk, and the Mohawks, are, as we know, are the fiercest. We can't help it. So she went and got her schooling. Literally, she did her schooling. It took her 4 years. By 1915, she had gotten employment in New York City at a prestigious private boys' school. And so, she's hanging out with her friends. She had a lot of friends by this point. They used to call her Andy. because they didn't like the name Edith. And it's actually kind of funny because Grandma's first name is actually Charlotte. So her name was Charlotte Edith Anderson, and her sisters thought that that name was too pretty for her, so they insisted that she be called Edith. So all of her life she was Edith or Aunt Ede or Grandma Edith. And so, like even though her first name was Charlotte and a lot of our kids carry that name now, she decided, I'm going to grab this and come and be a nurse. So by the time 1917 rolls around, she's been doing the being a nurse at the private school. The call up for World War I happens. And all of her friends are like, yeah, let's sign up. And I asked her again, I said, why, she goes, oh, everybody else is doing it. I thought I'd try. So she literally kind of signed up and was accepted into the Buffalo Base Hospital. So at the time, the American expeditionary forces to France in the First World War were based on where you kind of came from geographically. So because she had originally come over the border and had given her address of her sister's place in Buffalo, she was assigned to the Buffalo unit. And so she goes to France in February of 1917. And one of the things that we discovered about my grandmother, and we didn't really discover this until she was very elderly, just before she died, we were starting to move her things around. My dad and his siblings discovered a diary that she had kept during the course of the war, and it was secret because she wasn't allowed to keep. You weren't allowed to keep anything around where you might be, to tell anybody where you were going, because it was all very top secret. And so she had kept this thing hidden for, at this point, she's 106, almost 106. She had kept it hidden for over 80 years. And in the course of the diary, she talks about the excitement of leaving. She had told everybody at home that she was going to go do this. And in response, because our people are very, very, we hold our cultural traditions really clearly, they sent her traditional burial clothes in case she died overseas. And she could be buried in our traditional clothing so that on the other side she could meet all of our relatives in the way of our people. So she carried those with her too, all the way across the ocean to France. In her diary, she hated the crossing because they went in February, so through the North Atlantic, on a convoy that was accompanied by some Canadian naval ships also, and they were met halfway over by the British ones, so they had this flotilla going. And it was very rough seas, and her whole diary at the beginning is just, I was sick, she hated the crossing. Finally, by the time they first went to Cornwall in England, and then crossed over again, and then they ended up being in Alsace-Lorraine. So she gets to the hospital. It was a decommissioned hotel that became the base hospital, and they had barracks and tents all around this hospital. But the hospital was the place that became, or the hotel was the place that became the hospital. And she writes a lot about how much work it was to set it up, because they were literally setting up a hospital from the ground up. She was there with one of her friends, only one of them. Her name was Jean Carruthers. I met her when I was a child because she kept in contact with all of her friends throughout this time, and talks a lot about we had the British soldiers came over. They were really boring. She really connected a lot with the American farm boys, and I get that because they had farming in common. My great-grandfather farmed, my grandfather farmed, my dad farmed, my uncles farmed. So I get that she made that connection with those boys because they had that in common. And so she talks about that, and then the fighting starts. And so by June of that year, her work, she describes being basically on sun up to sundown, essentially, being in the wards. And they would get waves upon waves of injured soldiers, gas patients. So, and we know from the historical record, she was kind of really reticent about this, but we know from the historical record that in the First World War, the injuries that these boys suffered, and they were boys, the average age of an American soldier in the First World War was 19, because a lot of them lied and said they were older than they were so they could go and fight. And so, and I asked her one time, I said, Grandma, what was it like being a nurse on the ward? And sometimes she was really not in the mood to talk about it. And this day that it was right around Remembrance Day. And she looked at me and she said, the hardest part was holding the hands of little boys as they died. And we have to remember at that time, the nurse's job, she was the monitors. They didn't have the monitoring that we have now, with your pulse and your oxygen levels. Literally, she would sit, she would have 4 beds around her, and she was in the middle, and she'd have to monitor all those patients. So it's a constant, checking on them, making sure they're okay. And she said, and at night, a lot of them would cry for their moms. So she said it was really, and she's very reticent about, she was always very reticent about, emotions and things like that. But she said that was the hardest part, was listening to these young boys cry for their moms as they died. She talks really, during the summer of that year, she really bonded with one of her patients. He was only 17. His name was Earl King. He came from a farm just outside of Kent, Ohio. And she thought he was getting better. And she actually had saved him from hemorrhaging to death twice. And one time it was with the help of a guy who had come to deliver bread to the hospital. She literally had him put pressure on his wound. And the night that he died, she tried for 4 hours to save this boy because she loved him. And at the end of that, he died. And she said that she cried all day. I think about this a lot because I know that nurses bond with some of their patients. And some of them you feel it really deeply. So I think that this one boy represented all of them. And she felt his passing keenly. She writes in her diary that she went and bought flowers for him and went to the funeral because they would just bury them there outside the hospital. And she said it rained and her feet got wet, but she didn't care because she wanted to be there for her boy. That's what she called him. She wrote to his family and said that she wanted them to know he wasn't alone when he died, and they invited her to come and visit him after the war. And so she actually, she would send Christmas cards. I think my Aunt Helen still has quite a few of them. And I just really love this story because it represents what it means to be a nurse. To have that deep connection with a patient and to really feel deeply when they pass. So at the end of the war, it took them actually, the armistice was declared November 11th, 1918. It literally took them 6 months to unpack the hospital and go back over to New York. My understanding, and you have to remember, because of the Indian Act, the Indian agent had gotten wind of the fact that she had gone on this grand adventure and used to come around to her parents' house and say, as soon as Edith comes back, I'm enfranchising her because she's done something that you're not allowed to do. And my understanding, and I didn't know this until much later, 2 years ago before my dad died, that she and my grandfather got married, as soon as she got back, so that she could circumvent that enfranchisement thing and come back and live on the reserve. So as she came back, I think by 1919, my grandpa and her got married in the beginning of 1920. She came and by this point, my grandfather, they had a correspondence all during the war. Actually, in her diary, she says, was expecting a letter from C today and didn't get it. So they were corresponding all the time during the war. And she used to call my grandfather C. His name was Claiborne. And he was a twin. So this is also a really interesting sort of fact. So their farm, so his twin brother lived across the road from us with her, and he was married to her older sister, Mary. And they had been married by this point for about 6 or 7 years. And so when my grandma came back, my grandfather built her this beautiful house that I am the lucky recipient of. I live in the house that my grandfather built for my grandmother. And my bedroom is their room. So I really feel connected with her. Every day I get up and I get to look at a picture of her and I say, hi, Grandma, thanks for the house. And it's really wonderful to know that the roots of our family are in those 2 homesteads. My cousin Todd now lives across the road from me. To know that the root of our family is in those 2 spaces and that we've been there for generations. And in turn, my children will inherit that place, and hopefully it'll be a Montour residence or Montour homestead well into the future. So so she comes home to the reserve. She has my Uncle Bud, I believe, in 1924. And then had another son named Gilbert in Uncle Bud was born in 1922, I believe. Gilbert's born in 24. And they were only going to have the two. But my great uncle Gilbert, who I never knew, died at the age of 4 of acute appendicitis. And we know at that time, in the early 1920s, appendicitis in a rural area was a death sentence. Even with all of her medical knowledge, and also it's also important to note, and I've been told this by several of my neighbors, Grandma was like the medical care. People would, her first aid skills were legendary, and people would bring, when they were sick, would come to her house. So by this point, she had lost, so they had my Uncle Bud, and then they had Gilbert. Gilbert died when he was 4 years old, and they didn't really have another child until my Aunt Helen was born in 1930. And then 5 years after that, they had a set of twins. So my dad is Ronald, and his twin brother is Donald. And they're actually named after my grandfather's twin. So it's Ronald Clayton and Donald Wesley. And our family we love our repeating family names. Like my cousin Gib is named after Gilbert. And I've named my son Clayton, and my cousin Rick named his firstborn son Wesley. So we keep that, I think it's really important that even though my great uncle didn't have had sons of his own, his name lives on in his relatives. So our family is really tight. I really love that I'm really close with my cousins. There's 14 of us. My Uncle Bud had 10, 9 survived. My dad had us, me and my brother and my sister. My Aunt Helen had 2, and my cousin and my Uncle Don had just the 1. But we're very tight. Like I said, we live in close proximity to each other. We do all kinds of things. Lately it's been more funerals, unfortunately, than it has been good family celebrations, but we're trying to make sure that we don't do that all the time. And so Grandma, by this point, now she's a mom, but she did a lot of work. So during the Depression, they had a fully functioning farm. And there's a train track that runs on, right at the edge of the reserve. And at the time during the Depression, people could be let off at the road. And people from all over would come and ask to do work, and my grandma would feed them. In our traditions of the Haudenosaunee, when a person dies, it's a really huge deal to the community. And my grandparents, because they were Christians, would help all of our neighbors or traditional people. They would do all of the work to get the 10-day mourning feast done. And I've been doing a lot of my genealogy, and my grandparents' names pop up all the time in the obituaries, thanking them for the work they had done. So in 1946, the Lady Willingdon Hospital is created at Six Nations, and it was one of the first Indian hospitals, and Grandma went to work as a nurse there. By this point, she was, I think she would have been in her late 40s by that point, maybe even early 50s. But she worked there until she was 70 in 1963. And it is said on the reserve, if you were born in that period, hers would have been the first human hands to touch you because she was the nurse midwife for the area. I also found out later through my dad and my Aunt Helen that Grandma was also a palliative care nurse, and several of our relatives died in our house because she knew how to look after them as they passed. And she also did that. She did palliative care for several of our neighbors. So she was basically medical care in the community. We had one doctor at the time. His name was Dr. Davis, and he had a residence up in Ashwegan. And he would send all of his surgical equipment and all of his linens and drapes for her to clean because she was the only person around that knew how to do surgical clothing and keep it sterilized. My dad says he has a really interesting memory of walking into the house and steam just billowing out of the kitchen because she would be doing all of that work. And so he said that, she was very present, but there would be times she would just go to work. And he wouldn't see her because she would be up in Ashwegan working at the hospital. And she did this until she was 70. After her retirement, she became, people started to realize what she had done. So she was one of the first members of our Six Nations Veterans Association, and they honored her several times during our celebrations for Indigenous veterans. And when she finally died she died just 6 days shy of her 106th birthday, so it was April 4th, 1996. They had a full honor guard for her at her funeral, and presented the American flag to my Aunt Helen and her boys. And I still remember that as being like one of the most moving ceremonies, because they played taps and all of the songs for that at her graveside. One of the things that we get to do every year is to honor Grandma. When they do grave cleaning, and they put a flag at her gravesite every year because of the service that she gave to the American Army. I like to think of Grandma as truly a pioneer. She figured out a way around the Indian Act so that she could stay a Mohawk. She figured out a way to extend her service and her care through the community well into her 70s. And and as a child, I was born when she was 70, or actually she was 73 when I was born. And she took time for every single one of us. There's 14 of us. And each one of us has a memory, a very distinct memory of hanging out with Grandma and just, talking and going places with her and being with her. And I'm really lucky because she lived with us when she was all through until she couldn't look after herself anymore and had to go and do extended care. But at the time I was born, I got to spend all of the time with her. I'm one of only 3 granddaughters, and in our ways, your grandmother is really important. So I spent a lot of time with her, got to hear her stories. And the really interesting thing about Grandma is that she was a fluent Mohawk speaker. So when we would go to church and she would meet other ladies in the community, she'd be speaking fluent Mohawk with them. She spoke it with her sister who lived across the road, and they would fight a lot. And when they didn't want me to know what they were talking about, they would switch to Mohawk. And it's really also, I have clear memories of some of the older traditional people coming to visit her. And they would speak in either Seneca or Cayuga to her, and at the time they could understand each other. And I remember one of our famous faith keepers on the reserve, a chief, his name was George Buck. And he was really quiet, but whenever he talked to my grandmother, he would just chatter. And she would be laughing about him, and I would say, Grandma, what were you guys talking about? She goes, well, George isn't very good in English, but in language he's a Shakespeare. So she used to maintain her language that way, but she never passed it on to us because she said, you're not going to need it. Which I find really, that's sad, but she was a progressive woman. She wanted things to go, and she wanted us to get educated and have good lives. And so whenever things, like I said, whenever things get hard, and my kids do this too, and I know that a lot of my cousins do as well, they think about Grandma getting off the train in 1910, not knowing what she was doing, and having that incredible career and that incredible life and that great story to come and tell us. So I want to thank you for this great honor. She was an amazing woman, and I'm really, really proud to be her granddaughter. Nyawagoa.
I do want to call one more person that I met serendipitously as things happen in life, and that's Tina. Tina, if you don't mind coming. Tina is the great-granddaughter of Edith Montour. I know it's Edith. Yeah. And that's why you get a special gift. Oh. And she is also, and that's how I met her, in one of our launch of PPSOs. And so where is Julia? Julia Fineshko comes back from a break, and
we met in the washroom.
Listen, I have met a lot of other important people in the washroom, so here you go. So, can I talk with you? Sure. And Julia says, she is the great granddaughter of Edith Montour. I go, oh my gosh, you got promoted on the spot to icon in nursing. So you have one generation, two generations, three generations. So I gave you. Well, then I don't give you another one. So, Nyawen, sorry, from your family? Your family also? Nyawen.
Thank you so much.
To you. You need to know two things meanwhile that I do this. All of the gifts that we buy at Arenio for anyone, anything, are actually from indigenous communities, all of them. Because the Truth and Reconciliation, 94 calls of action, speak about building. I keep giving you more and more and more, but I will give you more.
No.
Now, I probably didn't give you because I'm too emotional, so here you go.
Yeah.
Because it says to build communities also. So we are very, very touched to hear you today, and also very sad. I tell you why. And my president and president-elect will relate to this big time. I can see that in their face. We were in Picanjicum. Some of this is happening to this day. Some of this ought not to be happening. And I mean, we could be talking, I don't know how long, and we will be talking for I don't know how long. But we need to make justice to the injustices faster than what we have. So you are just started a fire. We are going to close today with a sacred fire, but you started a bigger fire for us to keep going on making things happen or helping open doors for things happening. Thank you. Thank you, Nyawen.
Thank you, Doris. Thank you so much once again, Terry. Very, very inspiring. We are all so thrilled that you were able to join us today. Moving on, it is now my pleasure to introduce you to our second guest speaker, Bernice Carnegie. Bernice Carnegie is a Canadian author, community leader, and speaker who has dedicated over 4 decades to education and social justice. She was named after her aunt, Bernice Isabel Carnegie Redmond, who made history as Canada's first Black RN and public health nurse. Bernice is the daughter of legendary hockey player and community builder Herbert Carnegie and Audrey Redmond. Bernice Carnegie Redmond made a historical breakthrough in 1945 when she became the first Black RN in Canada. Starting her pioneering career in public health nursing in Nova Scotia, she went on to become the first Black RN hired by Ontario's Victorian Order of Nurses. She is recognized for her lifelong commitment to nursing, leadership, and advancing racial equity in Canada. Her work reminds us that nursing leadership extends beyond clinical care and to challenge discrimination, advocate for human rights, and to help build for a more equitable and compassionate health system for all communities. Please help me welcome to the podium, Bernice Carnegie.
Thank you very much. I might need a... We're whispering up here, trying to figure it out. But I am delighted to be here. I have a very auspicious name, and while we're setting up, getting ready, maybe I should tell you I hated the name Bernice. I was the third child in our family, and my father got to name me, and he decided to name me after his favorite sister. And I tried to get rid of Bernice. I think, call me B, call me Bernie, call me BC, call me anything, but don't call me Bernice. But it never took. And there is a reason it never took, because I was supposed to keep the name. Now, okay, here we go. Let me see here if I can make this work. All right. If everybody can see and we're all good, let's see.
I'll be your clicker. Just look at me and I'll click at yours.
There's so many. Can you give me the mouse? Does the mouse work? Can I use the mouse? No, no, it's okay. You can read it here. Right? Works? Guess I'll just do it. Is that the only way it'll work? Okay. All right, we're moving. So as you know, I do have a very auspicious name, Bernice Carnegie. And what you're seeing in front of you are all the names that at one time my aunt used. And this is her journey. And I think that you will discover that her journey showed a lot of determination. It showed a huge amount of courage. And she finally got to her goal. So all of you are here because you're working towards that goal. You're working towards being the best of who you can be in a field that you absolutely love. Well, let me just see here. Okay. There's plan A. Then there's plan B. And then we get to plan Z as we try to figure out why our machine isn't quite doing what it wants to do. So it won't work if I just do this? Right here?
No, this way.
Okay. All right. So sorry about that. We're trying to make our way. Well, one of the things I discovered in my family, I didn't know we had slave heritage on the Jamaican side of our family. But this document was sent to me, and you'll see the circled area shows that our great-grandfather actually is on a document where he was owned by somebody. And I know that many of you come from different backgrounds where the history is not always pleasant, and this is one of the unpleasant parts of our history. But it's interesting how you have to navigate around whatever happens in your life so that you can be the person that you want to be in your present life. This is a picture of my grandparents, Bernice's mom and dad. From Jamaica? Any Jamaicans in the group? Yes, we got a few hands waving there. Love it. Absolutely. So we got the short grandfather and the tall grandmother. But somehow they made it work, and they ended up having 7 children. And my aunt was the 4th of the 7 children. So they came in 1912. Now, we don't quite have the same history that Terry was talking about in her family, because we're all coming from somewhere else. But 1912 back then, from the statistics, only 500 black people in Toronto at that time. So my grandfather had a limited education. He ended up doing with what a lot of black men did at the time. The openings were basically servitude, and he ended up being a janitor for 42 years with Ontario Hydro, and there he is in his uniform. Well, he was a pretty smart janitor. This gentleman ended up buying property all over the city. So anybody know where Blewern Avenue Road is? He had 3 homes down at Blewern Avenue Road, Forest Hill, North Toronto. And when I started doing the history on this side of the family, I talked to the adopted child, the youngest adopted child that my grandparents had, and he was in his 80s at the time. And he said, "Did you know your grandfather had 30 acres of property at Yonge Street and 401? And I went, my father told me he had a lot of properties, but I didn't know there were 30 acres. And he said, "I remember as a child, a young child, coming and helping him spray the orchards there at North York." And so this is what North York looked like. We're talking about around Mallasman Square. Earl Haig, down the road from Earl Haig. And that's what the community looked like at the time. Now, in the background, you'll see a house. That was the house. The houses didn't even have numbers on them at the time. They didn't have numbers. They were known by the family. So my grandfather got a hold in North York and certainly made his mark. So here is the house that he had built. That's the house that sat in the middle of nowhere on Empress. And that is the house that Bernice Carnegie, my aunt, was raised in. So just to give you a little sense of who they were. Now, things weren't always easy. So here's the path. The path was a little rocky. As you heard Terry talk about, there were some roadblocks along the way. And the journey was not always easy. I didn't appreciate my aunt at a time when I should have, when I was younger. I kind of knew her story, but you know what? You really don't understand what's going on. So here she is, young girl in school. And I underline the word declare. She declared she wanted to be a nurse. Now, most of us don't even think about what we want to do when we're 8 years old. But at 8 years old, she declared, "I want to be a nurse." She'd had her tonsils out. And she goes, "Yeah, that's what I want to do." So she didn't know at the time what the road was going to look like in order to do that. And she did have to pass a number of those roadblocks. So one of the roadblocks is, here she is, born in Toronto in 1917, went to school here, enjoyed a life here, and then she wants to follow her dream. But guess what? They didn't accept black nurses in nursing school here. In Canada, the country that we thought was so open and wonderful, they did not want to help her to her dream. So this little article has come out of Agnes Kalasti in 1997. She actually did a paper on this that you can probably look up and find out more about what the times were like and what the struggles were like for someone like my aunt. She had to make a decision. I really do want to be a nurse. I really do want to follow my goals. So how am I going to do that? So apparently, the minister at her church was from the U.S. and suggested that maybe she might want to look at that option. She didn't know that looking at that option was going to be another adventure, but a difficult adventure. Because they were going to train you, but it was a segregated society. So we understand segregation? Yeah. If you look like this, you got to go over there. And if you look like that, you got to go over there. But one of the things was that for her, she was the wrong color. And all of a sudden, she was faced with, you know what? I can't drink out of the water fountain. I can't use that washroom. I can't go into that store. I can't sit in that restaurant. And I inherited her documents. My Uncle Nathan handed them down to me. And in there was a tape, but I didn't listen to the tape right away. It was one of the old ones, right? Recently, I had it digitized. And I listened to her. And I heard the part of her story that she never spoke about when she was giving a presentation to nurses to say, you can do it. You know, oh, you can do it. But she didn't say what she had to go through to do it. And so that presentation, or that information, is at BerniceCarnegie.com, family website, where I've actually quoted some of the things that she said in her interview and on that tape. She went to St. Philip's School in Virginia. It was a segregated nursing school. The white nurses and the black nurses. They got the same curriculum. They didn't quite always get the same treatment. So you will hear a little bit about that if you go to that website. She was in her third year, in the middle of her third year, between her third and fourth year, and she took a little pause. She paused for love. She paused for love. And her love child is right here. Nate, will you please stand up? This she married Nathan Redmond and had Nate Jr. down the road. They were writing to each other. They'd actually met in Toronto at parties. The black women would invite their brothers to the parties, and that's how they got to, interact a little bit. And so actually in our family, brothers and sisters married. So my mother is Nathan's father's sister, And my father is Nathan's father's mother. So we had couples marrying there, and it was really wonderful. But yes, they met when they were in their teens. He went into the Army. She went to the States for her education. They were writing back and forth. And finally, she went, oh, I'm getting a little older. I think we need to do something about this. So they got married in New York. She did not want to cross the border. Once she'd gone into the U.S., she was afraid to actually go back home. So she stayed there the whole time and got married there. He went back to Canada, and she stayed in the U.S. But she did fulfill her dream. She did end up doing what she wanted to do. Here's the thing. You look at that certificate, and she wanted to honor two families. She was born Bernice Carnegie. In my records, I read that her father faithfully every month sent her $10. That's all he was allowed to send. $10 across the border. But he paid for her tuition, it kept sending that $10. And so her graduation records show both names. She's honoring her father, and she's honoring the family that she married into as well. And that's a little bit different back then, because women often just dropped their family names and they just went on to taking, or dropped their given names and went on to taking their family names. So in 1944, she got her papers to be a nurse in Virginia. But I'm going to say this. You see, her father's voice. Now, a lot of black families will know this sentence. You have to be better. You have to be better than everybody else if you're going to make it. And unfortunately, that's what we're told. That's what I was told. That's what I told my kids. And I've been hearing a lot of other families that are the same. They tell their families the same thing. You have to be a little bit better. Not even a little bit. You have to be a lot better. She knew that when she went there, that her parents were expecting that she would toe the line and she would make sure she did what she wanted to do. And when I listened to her voice on that tape, she actually said, you know, there were outside activities to do, but I kept them to a very minimum because my job was to get my grades. My job was to get my credentials. Your job, you're sitting here right now, what is your job? Your job is to not forget the goal that you're going for, because people have helped you get here. But it still is about you. It's about what you want for yourself and what kind of a contribution that you want to make in the world. So she got a scholarship after the third year. And guess what? The government didn't want to extend her visa in Canada. The director of nursing phoned Ottawa. They phoned Ottawa on her behalf, and she got to stay. But what's really interesting is she got a second scholarship to Columbia University if she wanted to take it. But she didn't take it. She didn't take it. Love took over. She was missing her guy. And she came home. She came home. But she came home with a degree in nursing, and she came home with a degree in public health nursing. That's what that first scholarship was all about. So here she is coming home. And here's that certificate that says, I am an RN in Canada. In Canada. And again, she wanted to honor her father's family, the family she was born in, and the family she married in. And so she made sure her records showed that. And here I am up here waving this around, but you know what I'm talking about. A milestone, for sure. She comes back to Canada, and she's registered. She's ready to go. Here you are, you're fresh out of school. Oh man, I'm ready to take it on. I'm ready to show my stuff. And she goes to be with her husband in Nova Scotia. And they go, well, we've never seen a black nurse. They hadn't seen a black nurse anywhere in Canada. She literally had to go for legal help to get in the system. And that lawyer ended up going straight to the head department himself with her papers. And she said a week later she got a notice saying that she could apply where she wanted to. But it took a little bit to do it. She went back and forth to that office, and they kept saying, oh, well, we haven't got things, things are not ready. They come back next week. Oh, she comes back next week. No, they haven't done anything. Oh, that's when she said, okay, I know I'm getting the runaround here. So she went to the lawyer, and she ended up being the first black nurse in public health nursing. But they'd only let her work in the black community. We're not letting you in any hospitals here, We might rub off. Maybe we're going to rub off. But no, that's how she got started. There's more to the story. I can't explain all of it right now, but if you'd like to read it, it's on my website. Breaking barriers. Oh, there she is. She just called in. She just called in on cue. Thank you. She just called in to let us know that she heard that you were all listening to her amazing story. Thank you, Aunt Bernice. Thank you for that. So, VON. VON, as you know, is going into the public. It is public health nursing. She felt that that was her strong point, but they weren't going to make it easy on her there either. They said the board, we got to take it to the board. We haven't had anybody like you before. We've got to take this to the board. Now, the board was kind of, I'm going to use the word dicking around. And it took them a while. And then finally, the director said, hey, I'm hiring you. But you better be as good as they tell me you are. And she got started, and one of the great things was that she ended up being acting director eventually, and having an amazing record in the community. She ended up living in the community in which she was raised in North York. She ended up, actually, my uncle and her lived in our home, my parents' home, just down the road from where they were raised. And that she's standing in front of the home that I was actually raised in at 244 Empress, and it's still there. It's still there. It was property owned by our family, and it was a home that was built by our family, the Redmonds. And So, yeah, here she is on her way doing what she did so well. She was a trailblazer. She was a change maker. She was a roadblock buster. That's what we're asking each of you to be. We're asking each of you to be the change makers of today. Because nothing has changed and everything has changed. It's still not just open season for all of us. We need to fight our way through it. We need to have the resolve to make sure that it happens. So you're sitting here going, oh, all this stuff about the past, does it really affect me? Does it really make a difference to me about what happens with, people are dead and gone. She's not dead and gone. She's alive. She just rang in. She's our lesson. The present is your gift. The future is your motivation. And I'm going to just take you to this slide because she's in our book. This is our family book, A Fly in a Pail of Milk. A Fly in a Pail of Milk. My father's book. He wrote it back in the 1990s, but he included the family in it. And then 100 years later, in 2019, I got to write part 2 to the book, where I got to say what I felt about my family and especially about my aunt. So I want to know if there's anybody in this room who was born in October. We got October? Okay. Anybody close to October the 28th? Yes. You're October the 29th. You're October the 29th. Okay. Well. October the 29th. The book that you're going to share. And Hugo. Hugo, come on up here. So Hugo came and talked to me during lunch. And we discovered something. We discovered we went to the same high school.
Yep, Earl Haig.
Earl Haig.
I recognize the school. I actually recognize the house.
Yeah. 244 Empress? Yeah. So Earl Haig. Any other Earl Hagers in here? Oh, yeah, so good. we thought we'd break out into Earl Haig, alma mater, whatever. But anyway, Earl Haig. We were the first black family to go to Earl Haig. Had 3 generations of family that passed through Earl Haig. And Hugo gets the other book. You're welcome. But yeah, there's a lot more to the story, but you know what? It's too complicated to tell all aspects of it. But I hope you understand the importance of what you're doing. Like if she could say at 8 years old, this is what I want to do. And if she could go through all the things that she went through to do it, to be the first of anything, you pay a toll. There is a price to be paid. There's a price to be paid for everything that you do. And emotionally, it took a toll. It took a toll. But she did it. She is one of the women that opened the doors for all of you. Do not take it lightly. Take the responsibility to be who you can be. To be the best of who you can be. So I thank you very much for letting me share this story.
go. Now, thank you to you for having had a mother so inspiring. Thank you. May I assume that some of your family members? Okay. Thank you very much.
I am grandniece.
Oh, your grandniece.
Yes, I'm Bernice's daughter. Yeah.
She has spoken about you. I'm not going to tell you what she has said, but she has spoken about you.
My son, my daughter and my son.
Okay, handsome son.
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
yes. Okay, too bad I don't have a son or a daughter. I don't know. Whatever is your preference, I'm okay with what. Here you go. Actually, my son is married with a guy very handsome like you. So here you go. Okay, can I have, please, my president, Dr. Angela Cooper. 1 second. Jocelyn, I know she's in tomorrow listening to us. So Jocelyn Hazayak, Dr. Jocelyn Hazayak, the first black nurse RNO president, tomorrow will be listening to the proceedings. She's from Jamaica. And now, Dr. Angelita, I call her Angelita, I don't know if she likes it, but Dr. Angela Cooper Brathwaite, please. Come. Also president of RNO. Darling.
Thank you.
And, excuse me, Order of Canada and Order of Ontario. Here you go. Miss Dr. Claudette Holloway, please. Now I know the taste of this lady. Another of our awesome presidents of RNO. Thank you. Any other family member of Bernice? Any other family member? Okay. Can I have all the black nurses and black nursing students in this room stand up, please? And there is, where is your mama? Here you go. Now, to my friend and me, she knows how to do things better than us. 3 or 2 of your kids? 2 of her kids went to nursing. Well, mine went to engineering. Okay. So I do hope that you heard Bernice very much so, because yes, things are better. You can study in Canada, but things, and yes, they're better because you can become a director of nursing. But consistently I hear, and she has spoken with me about that, many others, some smiling, many crying, that they need to do more, whether it's studying more, whether it's fighting more, or whether it's actually staying silent more, to become whatever they want to become. And I'm not saying that being a staff nurse is not an honor, because it is. It was my biggest honor. But people should be able to become whatever they want. Yeah. So we have a lot of fight, so you are going to help us fight that fight. Thank you. And can I have, thank you. Can I have, before I give to Hugo back, can we have any indigenous nurse or nursing student stand up, please? I was afraid of this. So, I was afraid of this. We do have staff that are indigenous. We need to make sure, and this is we as RNO, all of us, that indigenous students, because there are quite a bit, feel more welcome, more included, whatever we need to do, so we see You know, I don't know proportionally compared to black students and nurses, but we need to have them here so they're part.
You need to invite them because our people, we would rather be invited.
Okay.
And so when you're considering your selections for your AGMs, when you're considering people to be on committees, invite them.
Fantastic. So here it is. So we don't need a resolution for that. That would have been a wonderful resolution. We will make it a resolution that every chapter, not interest group because that's one per interest group rep, but every chapter that has more than 3 people must invite at least one of them to attend, because everything is covered when they're consultation reps. So we absolutely will make that happen, and thank you for telling us that. Thank you very much. Hugo, back to you.
Thank you, Doris.
Hello. Okay. Thank you, Bernice, for sharing your story and your presentation. Just a little personal note, thank you very much for the gift. And I think that just hearing these stories just reaffirms the need for nursing in general, nursing practice, nursing education, and our commitment to having our education and practice rooted in social justice and health equity. And that's something that I think we can all take back home and just have a thought about it today, and see how you can integrate that into your own practice, into your own journey as you head into whether you're practicing or whether you're heading close to graduation, and for those that are just graduating. So, moving on, we are very excited to be presenting the RNAO Student of Distinction Award at our luncheon today. RNAO's Membership Recognition Awards recognize the tremendous contributions that nursing students make across the healthcare system. It is now my pleasure to present the RNAO Student of Distinction Award as selected by the RNAO's Member Recognition Awards Committee. Can I please ask our President NP Lamo Dolkar and our CEO Dr. Doris Grinspan join me on stage to present this important award.
The RNAO Student of Distinction Award honors a current undergraduate nursing student who has made significant contributions acting as a change agent, resource, and mentor within their undergraduate nursing program. This student also shows active involvement in RNAO, regions, chapters, and interest groups. This year, it is our honor to announce the recipient of the RNAO Student of Distinction Award. Congratulations to Nyashore Dang.
And just to add on, we also invited our president-elect, Sue LeBeau, to help present the award. Okay, so Nyshore is a student in the Western University Fanshawe College Collaborative BSCM program in London. She works as a clinical extern, shout out to clinical externs, at London Health Sciences Centre, supporting patients with daily needs and collaborating with the interdisciplinary team. As the first in her family to pursue post-secondary education, she says she experienced many barriers growing up. Those experiences shaped her perspective and drew her to nursing, which she sees as an avenue to change healthcare from within. Nashwar created the Equity in Every Shade series, which focuses on assessing conditions across diverse skin tones using the Monk Skin Tone Scale. She has presented her work through RNAO to help increase awareness around equity in healthcare education and clinical practice. She's a proud member of the Canadian Black Nurses Alliance. Her involvement has allowed her to help organize the Black Health Fair, mentor students, participate in health equity discussions, and contribute to research and advocacy initiatives focused on improving representation and care for underserved communities. So if you had anything to say to everyone, I'm going to give you a minute.
although I do a lot of presentations, I still feel shy talking in front of people, so forgive me. But it's really an honor being here because, as he said, I'm the first one to go to school in my family, first one to step foot into a school into elementary, and then going to high school, and then now university. And I look forward to pursuing more education. Receiving this award is not just for me, it's for my family as well. They trekked all the way from South Sudan, if you know where that is. They're refugees, and their sacrifices, strengths, and their stories have really motivated me to be here and to create change, not just in healthcare, but in everyday life. And so pursuing more advocacy work, more challenges is something that my family always ensued into me. As you said, being Black, you have to do more. You can't just pull up in school, just do the grades. You have to step out of your comfort zone and be an advocate for yourself and for other people. So all the words you have said today, and as you said as well, have really touched me, and I've experienced them as well. And hopefully my journey inspires more students to do more and to create a more equitable space for everyone. So thank you so much for this recognition. Thank you so much for presenting this, and hopefully everyone has a change of their own. So thank you.
And if I may add, you're a darn fantastic speaker. Fantastic speaker! Fantastic speaker. What an honor. What an honor. I don't know, you probably haven't seen it, but we featured another refugee in Metroland, whichever is the newspaper, this year for Nursing Week. I will introduce you to her. An amazing, amazing woman, needed to go through hula hoops on the issue of renewing her permit to stay. The workplace wanted her, everybody wanted her, and we needed to, and she's amazing, and you will love meet with her. Yeah. Thank you.
Congratulations again to Nashor. This honor is extremely well deserved. And again, thank you to everyone who has been here today. And so moving forwards, as a reminder, the RNA Home Office, what time is it right now? We're a little bit overtime, actually. A little bit overtime. As a reminder, the RNA Home Office official opening will be commencing shortly. Undergraduate nursing students are invited to attend the NSO's AGM, which will take place from 4 to 5 p.m. in this room where you will meet the executives and find out more about the NSO.
The opening ceremonies of our 101st Annual General Meeting will begin at 6 p.m. in the Prince Ballroom at the Crown Plaza Hotel located at 900 York Mills Road. Transportation service will be provided following the RNAO Home Office official opening from here to the hotel. Finally, thank you so much to everyone for attending and to the hardworking NSO executive team for collaborating with us and RNAO's home office staff for organizing this amazing luncheon. Together, we build leadership for today and tomorrow. Thank you.
I just, for those